No,
Good
glad to have
afternoon.
glad to have you on the show. I understand you're Nikki D, and you're an advocate here in Alabama for prison reform. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Could you tell us a little bit about what you do here?
Sure. So I work directly with different organizations on the inside. I was introduced to organizing and advocacy through Free Alabama Movement. But I work directly with people on the inside to basically be a voice and enhance what's going on or what needs to be done or what's happening, or whatever is requested of me to help.
Great. You mentioned the Free Alabama movement. I get around on social media quite a bit, and I've seen that group there. Could you tell us what they do and how long have they been actually active?
Sure. So, for Alabama Movement, I came into the picture around 2016. They started out in 2014, though. It originated with Melvin Ray, which is also known as Son. He founded it, and then there's a co-founder, which is Robert Earl Council Kinetic. They started out, inside the prison with FAM. And I believe they started in 2013. It's a civil and human rights organization committed to improving the lives of men, women, and children incarcerated in Alabama. It's all inside based, composed of people on the inside like freedom fighters, revolutionaries, human and civil rights activists and advocates, spiritual, religious communities, stuff like that.
Right.
And they basically use methods of work strikes, boycotts, protests, social media campaigns, and things like that. But they've been responsible for several shutdowns that have happened in the Alabama Department of Corrections, as well as a multiple statewide work strike,
Right.
boycott, protest, and a social media campaign. Um,
So they're really active in prison reform, in primarily in Alabama, but in other states also. Is that correct?
Correct.
I've seen a post there somewhere. I can't really remember where it was, but I do remember that name, Robert Earl Council. And if I'm not mistaken, has he been threatened by anyone as being an advocate for change because of his participation in advocacy for change?
Yes, he has. So Robert Earl Council, also known as Kinetic Justice, he's currently at Limestone Correctional Facility, and he's been threatened multiple times. Back in 2021 at Donaldson, the guards there jumped on him and beat him and caused him to be airlifted to UAB, and he lost sight in his left eye. And
Wow.
then recently he's been at Limestone, where he's been threatened by, I believe he's a lieutenant, Jeremy Pelzer.
At
And
Limestone?
so Pelzer has threatened his life several times. He's also told different people that are incarcerated there, like if they do something to him, basically, he'll make sure they get away with it and nothing happens to them. He also has some officers that I guess you could call them, in his little group that constantly, harass him and try to intimidate him. No, no, she's
You know,
not.
this,
She's
this
gone.
doesn't this doesn't surprise me a bit, given what I've seen, how corrupt the Alabama Department of Corrections is, and its routinely way of doing things today. Is Robert okay, or do you know?
So right now they have him in segregation, and that's always challenging to your mental health. To do long periods of time in segregation. And they have him in there on false disciplinaries. So, but other than that, he's okay.
Okay. Uh, do you participate in any of the rallies and protests that that Alabama's having at the current time?
I do. So I participate in others' rallies, and I also organize some of my own. And I go to as many as I can possibly attend.
I saw some of the videos of the protests and rallies. Some of them have been good, a rather large turnout, but some of them have been really small. Is there anything that can be done to garner more support? Is there anything Real Talk can do to help others garner support for these protests and rallies?
It's a matter of people that have a loved one, friend, or family member incarcerated actually showing up to the rallies because, there's power in numbers. And so, don't just complain about what's going on with your loved one or someone that's incarcerated. But when we have the rallies and the protests and stuff like that, or, the phone zaps or the email zaps, whatever's going on, just participate in them. Like, it matters. So, I mean, it's really up to the people outside showing a commitment to their loved one incarcerated and showing up and doing something about it.
Okay, Nikki, you said something about mental health effect on someone being in segregation for long periods of time. Could you tell us anything about that?
Sure. So, with Robert Earl or Kinetic personally, what they've done when they've been putting him in segregation is that they will try to limit his communications to anyone at all, like even the outside. So they took his PIN number, which is what you use to call your family and loved ones with, how you use the tablet to call out. They shut that down. Then anyone else's tablet he would use, they would shut their tablet down. My main number that I talk to people on is blocked from anyone in ADOC being able to call it. So
they blocked your number. They actually blocked your number.
Yeah, if you try to call it, it'll tell you it's restricted.
Huh.
So no one inside ADOC can call my main number. So I got a prepaid phone, and we went through about 3 or 4 different phone numbers and accounts for that. And then I guess they realized, that I was just going to keep changing the number and creating accounts, so they kind of just let it go. But, they closely monitor, and listen to all of our interactions and see what's going on. But, it's segregation just for anyone, though, is psychological torture. You're placed in a cell basically the size of a bathroom with no access to be able to communicate with the people around you. You just have, what's known as the runner, which is another incarcerated individual that brings ice and trays around and stuff like that. And then the officers, which they're supposed to do a check, ever so often and look in and make sure you're still alive and everything else. But there's been instances where they've walked by like they did the check and found people dead, where they've committed suicide or overdosed and stuff like that, but it's psychological torture. I mean, to be in a cell the size of a bathroom and no communication to anyone or anything like that, like, mentally it does something to you. And there's statistics that have proven that.
I believe there was something written here or published here maybe last year, first part of this year. It was an article from the United Nations concerning the Mandela issue of being in solitary confinement so long. If I'm not mistaken, they condemned that everywhere.
They did, but it hasn't been condemned here in the U.S. Now, there was a congresswoman, Cori Bush. She introduced something in legislation to end solitary confinement in the federal prisons, but no one has done anything about the state prisons.
Do they have a lot of people in solitary confinement, or is it just a few?
There was some statistics that I read about the other day, and it was from a group it's a nonprofit called Solitary Watch, And they did some statistics back in 2019 that showed that roughly 6.3% of the U.S. population, and this shows you how many people are locked up too, 6.3% equates to 81,000 people. But 81,000 people were locked in solitary confinement at any given day in 2019.
That is just outrageous.
It's even sadder that 81,000 people equates to 6.3% of the prison population. That tells you how many people are locked up.
Right. Would you say that's just a common practice for corrections to use solitary confinement as a coercion technique?
I would because I know several individuals that have been placed in segregation based off of false disciplinaries or no disciplinary at all. And then, solitary confinement is supposed to be just that, solitary confinement. Well, ADOC has resorted to using these solitary confinement cells, and they place 2 men in one cell. So 2 grown men in the size of a bathroom, like, I really don't even know what to say about that. But I mean,
would be pretty crowded.
yeah. But I mean, stuck in that cell all day trying to get along with each other, you might have 2 different personalities. Like, it's just not right.
Yeah, you're in there being punished, or you're in there
Yeah.
For whatever reason. And I'm sure being in solitary confinement, you're not in the best frame of mind for
No.
for everyday situations. Alabama's got a real problem going on right now with not wanting to let anybody out. And what I'm referring to is the parole board and the real low grant rate, which it is involved in right now. We hear a lot that, they're like 30 goes up and 6, 5, 6, 7 make it. To me, that tells me that one of 2 things: either everybody is not deserving of it, and if that's be the case, then that be the case. But it's just hard for me to wrap my mind around that many people going up and the grant rate being so low. And from what I've seen recently is that, I saw one instance where a man that an incarcerated citizen had died in prison, and he came up for parole relatively close to after his death, and the parole board actually set this man off 5 years. That tells me that apparently someone is not looking at these files. They're making decisions based outside of, going over the inmate's file and, looking at his threat to society. It just appears to me that they're just, sitting back and, granting parole based on personal.
When it comes to parole in the state of Alabama, if I'm not mistaken, and I could be wrong, I think the parole percentage is somewhere like 8 to 12%, if that. And when you go up for parole, and I think I know the individual that you're referring to, and if it's the one I'm thinking about, he went up for parole the day he died. He he was in there for burglary, and he had several different burglary, receiving stolen property, like nothing violent. And they got him under the habitual offender law, and he did 20 years. And when he went up for parole, they set him off for 5 years, and he ended up basically committing suicide. He overdosed. But it's a sense of hopelessness. Like, it's like going up all over again for your charges. They're not looking at what programs you've completed. There's nothing from the officer saying that you're this type of person, you haven't been in trouble or anything like that. Like, it's basically they've already got it in their mind they're going to deny you, when you go up for parole. And this committee that does this, the parole board, it's people that are selected by, I call her Poison Ivy, but Kay Ivy, so it's not even like a neutral group of people.
Like they're not bipartisan in the decision
Right,
making process.
right.
And that's what I get from it also. It's, something needs to be done. There needs to be, they're in all power sitting on those three positions. And
Well, so let me just wait on that a little bit too. So, there needs to be a set process for parole. Like, there needs to be something that shows you've completed these classes, or you've done X, Y, and Z, and then someone to speak to the type of person you were then and who you are now, because people change, they grow, they learn from their mistakes. I'm not the same person I was when I was a teenager. I mean, I'm a completely different person, you know?
correct,
And
correct.
most people that are even out here at some point have done something that probably could have landed them in prison. They just didn't get caught. That's the difference.
That's so true. That is so true.
We've all done stuff in our past that we regret, or that could have landed us somewhere different than where we are today. We just didn't get caught. That's the difference. But there needs to be a set criteria for parole. And if you go up and you get denied, then they need to give you, like, okay, you need to do this class, that class, and do X, Y, and Z. And then when you come up for parole again, you'll make it. There needs to be some kind of set criteria.
Right,
And that's just my thoughts on it.
right. Do you think some type of outside oversight would be beneficial to sit over the parole board and reviewing these decisions that are being made and how they come to their decision? Do you think that
Oh,
would be
absolutely. I think there needs to be an explanation for their decision and how they came to that conclusion, like how they got there.
right?
And but the oversight committee doesn't need to be selected by Kay Ivy.
Right.
uh,
Something
Something neutral.
not right. Something non-attached to the Department of Corrections or the judicial system as a whole.
Right. I agree.
Nikki, one more question. I've noticed on social media there's a whole lot of violence going on within the Alabama Department of Corrections from its inmates and its officers also. Do you have any idea or recommendations how, maybe Alabama Department of Corrections could possibly step up their security or be more observant and mindful of what's going on inside?
Well, first would be holding their officers accountable, because they have a lot to do with what goes on the inside. The things that are brought in, and the things that go on. They encourage some of the activity. They create the environment to justify the means.
Correct. And, there's a lot of corruption with smuggling of drugs and
Mm-hmm.
that kind of thing. And I'm sure the drug problem is a very bad problem inside. This inmate on inmate violence. I want to take this time to reach out to all the loved ones of the inmates that are currently doing time. Talk to your loved ones. Try to maybe get them to be a little kinder, a little softer with individuals.
A little more understanding.
Right.
Especially when it comes to, what I'm understanding, about borrowing things and money that's owed and everything else. Like, you understand at the point that you loan something out to someone, there's a possibility you're not going to get your money back. That doesn't mean for $10 you torture someone and hold them,
Or unalive them.
Yeah.
Right. And I see it as, by no means would I ever suggest that someone out in the world that has a loved one incarcerated, I would never insinuate that they're responsible for the ones inside. However, these are someone's son, brother, or husband,
Or wife, daughter, yeah.
right? Or wife's
Mhm.
daughter. Yes,
Mhm.
let's not leave the ladies out. But you know, I feel that family has as much influence as the captors, so to speak. And I would hope that that would be the case. Uh, this is a bad situation, and we really need to try to do something to curb some of this violence.
Yeah, so one of the things that I've been thinking about doing and I need to hold myself more accountable for and, just do it is I wanted to once a month have a meeting with everybody on the outside, where they have the opportunity to attend like a Zoom meeting or something and we talk about, what's going on the inside and just be a support group for each other. To help each other and encourage each other and talk about what's going on. And, because some people out here, their loved ones don't tell them exactly what's going on the inside. They try to hide it because they feel like they're protecting them.
Right.
So some people don't know, some people do, but definitely don't encourage it. Like try to lead them and guide them, in the right
Right.
direction.
To find some kind of nonviolent resolve to whatever the situation is.
Mhm.
Well, Nikki, I thank you for joining us today. It's been a pleasure, and I'd really like to do this again.
Sure, anytime, and you can watch my page, Nikki D. That's
Okay.
me on Facebook or the Fam Queen team. For any protests or rallies that I may